Hi everybody, it's Ajanette and I am going to go over how to actually input your data in SPSS and how to get your results for the purposes of your paper, for your mini paper. So again, we're going back to our mini paper. You're either examining your research question, do hiring recommendations or do professor ratings differ based on gender identity? So are ratings different between cisgender and genderqueer professors? Is there a significant difference in ratings or hiring recommendations based on race? Or is there a difference in hiring recommendations between Asian and Caucasian professors? So that's what we're analyzing. Your IV is going to be gender or race with 2 conditions. And your DV is either going to be the overall ratings, it's going to be the recommendations for interviews. And then your final stuff that you actually have to input and analyze is the participant information. So again, we're going to do a t-test. And so you all should have been exposed to SPSS. If you took Psych 121 or Soc 121, you will have been familiar with this. If you took Math 140, you're going to be at a little bit of a disadvantage. So try to rely on your groups. I have tutorial videos on SPSS in the Canvas modules, and then this also will serve as a tutorial video. So SPSS is like a big giant spreadsheet, but it's also a calculator, right? So in the spreadsheet, there's kind of 2 different views here. You have the first spreadsheet that's the variable view, and you have to tell SPSS what are my variables. So first you have to describe the data that you're going to input, and then the data view is where you put the data itself, okay? So I always start, when I do my variable view, I always start with my independent variable. Now I'm going to shrink this down a little bit so I can actually look at this and our data all together. And I'm not going to run the whole analysis for you. I'm just going to give you a demonstration and then you're going to run the analysis. So I'm going to start with cisgender versus genderqueer candidates, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a couple conditions and compare, and then you as a group will run the entire thing. So I'm going to first say, what is the name of my variable? So the name of my independent variable is gender. I'm going to say candidate gender identity. Now, a couple of things. The name is what is kind of behind the scenes. So SPSS is going to drag that into the data view. But it's really tricky in that it doesn't like any spaces in this column. So I just capitalize each word so that it's easier to read. And then I'm just going to copy that and I'm going to move it over here to label. But in here, I'm actually going to put my spaces. Label is what shows up in your SPSS output. Labels should be clear and specific. They should be as detailed as possible, so that when the output is run and you get your results, you know what it means and you know how to interpret it. Now notice as soon as I hit enter, when I moved it, I copied it and I moved it over here to label, it automatically defaulted to these things. Don't change the defaults, just leave the defaults the way that they are. We're going to do numeric data and I'm going to teach you to code your data, okay? Whenever you have a nominal variable, what you have to do is you have to code the data. So the only columns you really have to pay attention to is name, label, measure, in this case nominal, and when it's a nominal variable, you have to pay attention to values. So that's where I'm going to enter my codes. So I'm going to give cisgender a 1. So I'm going to put a 1 for my value, and that's going to be cisgender, and I'm going to click add, and then I'm going to say 2 for genderqueer, and I'm going to add, and then I'm going to click OK. Okay, and now see how these fit in. And that'll come in handy in just a minute, okay? Now the next thing I'm going to enter is my DV. Now remember I said we have 2 DVs. My one is my overall rating, and my second one was my overall hiring or interview recommendation. So I'm going to list both. I'm going to say overall, this is my overall rating, and I can do an underscore likability. And again, I'm just going to copy that and paste it. I do not have to, this is a scale variable. Remember that's interval or ratio data. So I do not have to code that, okay? Remember I only have to do name, label, and measure. And if it's a nominal variable, I have to do coding, but I don't have to for this one. Now I'm also going to say the overall hiring / interview recommendation. And again, I'm going to paste that over, and that's scale. So that's my IV and that's my DV. I also am going to have to enter information. I could have my manipulation check do things, but you don't need to worry about it. I already gave you the information that you needed for the manipulation check, so just calculate the corresponding percentages and put that in your results. So you'll start your results with your manipulation check, and you'll talk about what percentage correctly identified the name of the candidate, what percentage correctly identified the gender identity, and what percentage correctly identified the race. And even though a fewer number correctly identified the race, many of them identified the Asian. Many of the questions where they didn't correctly identify race is people who were resistant to actually specifying the race. So go through and review those and expound upon that where it's needed in your paper, okay? Okay, so we do have to include all of the blue columns, which is the participant data, right? So we don't have to include the orange columns because that is the manipulation check, unless you want SPS to do that for you, but I don't. I just want to do that separate. And then the blue data is your participant data, and that's important. So we're going to say participant race. Again, I'm going to move it over, and this is nominal. Now, in terms of coding, I already put the codes down here at the bottom. So we're going to say 1, let me just move this out of the way. 1 is going to be white / Caucasian. 2 is going to be African American. Add. 3 is going to be Latinx / Hispanic. 4 is going to be Asian American. 5 is going to be Middle Eastern. 6 is going to be multi-ethnic. And if there are others that aren't on there, you can just add a 7, right? We're going to click OK, and now those are going to fill in. Our next variable is participant gender. And I'm going to add my space. Again, it's nominal, so I need to go and code. 1 is going to be male. I try to be pretty consistent, so this is always how I code things. For me, it's like, okay, male, it's 1 penis, female, it's 2 breasts. I mean, that's kind of how I do it in my mind, so it just makes sense. Now, when you have a larger group and you actually have more diversity in terms of individuals that may have identified as non-binary or genderqueer, then we can break those all up. But the samples are so small, we want to keep them grouped together right now, okay? So we're just going to say anybody that identified outside of that non-binary we're going to keep them in one group, okay? And then my next one is participant H. That is a scale variable, so I don't have to code it. Then we're going to say participant sexuality or sexual orientation. And it is nominal, so I do have to code it. So we're going to say one as a homosexual identity, although we very rarely use that term. We really often say gay or lesbian. Heterosexual identity. 3 is a bisexual identity. 4 is other LGBT, oops, excuse me. See how it beeps at me and kind of yells at me? And we're, again, because you might have individuals that identified as pansexual, right? And so, or asexual. We want to just put those in one category because otherwise they're so small that they become identifiable. So we'll just say other LGBTQ identities, unless you have a large enough sample where they really can constitute a subgroup within that. Then we're going to do a marital status, participant marital status. Again, it's nominal, so we're going to come back and code. 1 is single, 2 is married, 3 is divorced. And I don't think I saw any other category, but if there were, feel free to add a 4. And then participant political affiliation. I used an illegal character, which was a space. It does not like that. So we're going to be mindful of that. Again, this is nominal. So we're going to say 1 is a Democrat. 2 is a Republican. 3 is an independent. 4 is a libertarian. 5 is a Green Party. 6 is other. And then finally, we're going to do participant religious affiliation. And again, that's nominal. Add my spaces. And since it's nominal, I'm going to code it. So we're going to say 1 as Christian, 2 as Catholic. Some people view them as the same. Some people view them as different. Muslim. 4 as Buddhist. Now, don't forget, we are, in fact, a country that theoretically values freedom of religion. That doesn't mean freedom of Christianity. It means all religions should be respected equally. I don't think that's always the case, but we try to be as inclusive as possible when we're conducting research because that aligns with our APA Code of Ethics. And it aligns with our professional ethics as psychologists. Same with gender inclusiveness, and same with sexual orientation. if you have biased views against any particular group, religious, gender identity, orientation, and this actually may not be a good field for you. Or you might want to do some work with your own therapist to work through that, because our professional ethics require us to be inclusive. Okay, so that is it. We have participant age and our two dependent variables. So what now we have to do is go to the data view. Notice how now all of the columns now have the name that we entered here in this first row. Okay, so this name now becomes the column name for the next thing. So now I want to go back and I want to just actually capture that data. So the first data I'm going to capture is for my my candidate gender identity. Okay, so I actually am not going to gather all of it. And remember, we coded this as being 1 or 2. So I'm just going to capture 27 cisgender individuals. Okay, and I know it's 27 because the first one doesn't count. And we're just going to count, we're going to enter 27 ones because we had 27 individuals who identified as cisgender. Okay, so you're going to have to code these yourself. 1 would be cisgender and 2 would be genderqueer. And then what we're going to do, and for race, you could say 1 is Asian and 2 is Caucasian. So however you want to do that. Now I'm going to snag some genderqueer data, and I'm just going to highlight these for my purposes, so I'll know it's column 55 through 75. Oh no, maybe I shouldn't do 55. Or maybe I shouldn't do that color since I already did that color. I'm going to do them in a light pink or purple. Okay, perfect. So now I'm going to do 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. I'm going to do 21, number 2. 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. Let's count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. Perfect. Okay, so now I have 27 cisgender candidates and I have 28 gender candidates. It's really important to know that the column represents a different variable and each row represents a participant. So when you're copying and pasting data, I'm going to actually move this around so that you can see all the cisgenders together, but I'm just taking segments of it. I'm just trying to take pieces of it. I don't want to actually run the analyses for you. I just want to run a segment of the analyses for you. So for you, you're just going to copy and paste all that data together. So I'm going to say from 28 up, I'm going to gather this data, and that goes here in my overall likability. In your case, you're just going to snag the whole data. And then from 55 to 75. And again, you're just going to snag everything down and put it in for your group. And then again, it's 28 and up. And this is now my overall hiring or interview recommendation. And then it's 55 to 75. Okay. Okay, now I'm missing something. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 22, 23. And it was only supposed to be 22. Okay, perfect. Now I'm going to go here and I'm going to now code this. So remember how we said white, Caucasian, 2 is African American. We actually need to go code it. So 3 was Latinx. So I'm going to go through and just code it really quickly. I want you to see what I'm doing though. When you get the data, it won't look like this. It'll be coded already. So I'm just quickly going through and looking at all the Latinx. Okay, and then our white was Caucasian was 1, African American was 2. So what I'm doing is I'm coding the data. Multi-ethnic was 6. I'm going to leave this one blank. This person said they were basically describing a multi-ethnic. Mixed is multi-ethnic. We're going to leave this one as blank. This is describing 2, so that's multi-ethnic. Middle Eastern was 5. Asian American was 4. I didn't have Native Americans, so we'll add them here. As 7, and that means I need to go through and make sure I add it back on my variable view. So participant race, we're going to add a 7, Native American. Okay, now going back to gathering my data, back to data view, it's going to be 1 through 28. And I'm gonna copy, paste, and then it was 55 through 75, so 55 through 75. Again, this is a bigger pain because I'm only taking segments out and not running the whole analysis. And then let me do, we said female was 2 and male was 1, so let me just code this. Again, we'll leave this blank. People either think they're funny or they don't respect the seriousness of the class, or they don't respect gender diversity. Either way, it's problematic. They have she, they, so we're going to say that's non-binary. Okay, and I'm just going to stop at gender so I can actually have time to run the analysis for you, okay? So again, let's copy and paste 1 through 28. And then 55 through 75. I don't have to code age, so I'm going to go ahead and pull that. So 1 through 28. And then 55 through 75. Perfect. Okay, perfect. So there's my data. I'm going to leave these ones blank for now. And I'm going to teach you how to run in SPSS, in independent measures t-test in SPSS, okay? So again, I'm not going to pay attention to anything beyond age at this moment. You can delete all that or you can leave it in there. It's not going to matter. Okay, so we're going to say analyze, and we're going to do first a descriptive statistics. So we're going to, I like to just click on frequency tables, and I'm going to tell it, what do I want frequency tables of? I want a frequency table of all of my participant information. So, oops, I don't know that I collected, okay, frequency tables. So let me go back because I clicked the wrong thing. So I'm going to analyze descriptive stats and frequencies. And I'm going to look at my candidate gender, so it can tell me how many, and we did race, gender, and age. I'll go ahead and throw my descriptive stats in for my DV as well. And I want to know the mean, median, mode, standard deviation, variance, and range. Keep in mind that those things do not apply to nominal variables, right? They only apply to scale variables, but I'm going to run them all at once because we're able to do that all at once. I'm going to look at my charts, and I'll come back and run charts differently. Let me just throw out the categorical variables so it's not confusing. We're going to run frequencies on age, likability, and interviewing, and we're going to do the mean, median, mode, standard deviation, variance, and range. We're going to choose a histogram because it's scale data, and we're going to run those. And then we're going to go back and we're going to go analyze descriptive stats, frequencies. I'm going to get rid of these, and I'm going to throw my categorical variables in, which was candidate gender, participant race, and participant gender. And the statistics, I don't need the statistics because they don't apply, but for those I'm going to do bar charts, and there you go. Remember, for nominal variables, we do bar charts. For the scale variables, interval or ratio, we do histograms, okay? Or I should say continuous variables, we do histograms. Okay, so I'm going to leave it at that. Now I'm going to analyze the data. So that's our descriptive stats. Now I'm going to actually do the t-test. So I'm going to go to Analyze, and I'm going to compare means. This is a means test. It's an independent samples t-test. My grouping variable is my independent variable, in this case, my candidate gender. And then I have two test variables. I have my overall likability and my overall interview recommendations. And I can click here and do a confidence interval. I'm going to use the default of 95%. And then I want to define my groups. So I'm going to click on grouping variable. And I used 1 and 2 as my coding. So we're going to put that in. And then we're going to click OK. And here's my t-test. So my t-test is showing me, this is looking at, is there a significant difference in likability between, so the overall ratings between cisgender and genderqueer candidates. You can see their means are very similar. They did have an unequal n, so their sample sizes were different. But when the means are really close to one another, it's not likely that it's going to be significant. When the means are really far apart, that's when it's going to be a bigger t and more significant. In this case, see how we have really small t's, negative 0.183, and your significance level is way bigger than 0.05. So we would say that there was not a significant difference in likability between cisgender and genderqueer candidates. T, comma, your degrees of freedom are 46. So T parenthesis 46 close parenthesis equals negative 0.183, comma, P equals 0.522. And so when it's not significance, I don't have to report an effect size. And there are templates outlined in the outline that I've provided you, so you can see how to translate that here in the results section. So you would say a statement of significance. There was or was not a significant difference in the DV based on or between the two different groups of the IV. And then you're going to give me your t-test information.